you may have heard of this thing called CRDP. So CRDP is if you are less than 50% of a VA disability rating, you cannot collect both your VA disability and your military retirement pay. They will deduct your VA from your retirement pay. You'll see that on your retirement statement coming off of your retirement pay, and then you'll see it over here coming to you as part of the VA. But you cannot get both. Once you hit 50%, you can now receive them concurrently. So you can receive all of your military pay with no deduction and all of your VA pay. So we call that concurrent receipt. Anybody have any better explanation?
So before any explanation, I just want to throw out there that with the VA, there's a ton of rules, and we've got to follow the rules, get what we want. And a lot of times we can try to go down that rabbit hole the way things should be. We've got to work with the way things are. I think it's an absolute travesty that somebody who retires after 20 plus years can't get their full retirement and disability. Makes no sense whatsoever. But it's the way the law is currently written. So essentially, if you are between 10 and 40% disabled with a VA, and you have your, your VA disability, they're gonna, like Rebecca said, they're gonna take, let's say it's $700 a month you're getting for VA. You got $2,000 a month of retirement pay. You're gonna get $1,300 from DFAS for your retirement. That's gonna be taxed. That $700 is gonna come from the VA, and there's not gonna be tax. Once you hit 50%, you're getting that $2,000 retirement check, complete, taxed, according to the state and federal. And you're gonna get that entire, I think 50% is around $1,000 a month, tax-free. You're getting both. So if that's your category, that's one of our goals, is to, at a minimum, get you over 50% so that you can get concurrent. Because it's no secret that, the older generations of veterans, when they separated, some of y'all, and you went to the VA, it's a lot different than it is now. The VA is a lot more forgiving right now. And that's one of the reasons that we do what we do, because, it's no secret that previous generations, well, as we go on in time, the newer generations get a little bit better benefits. It seems like we gotta catch up, gotta get the previous generations caught up and taken care of.
All right, PACT Act. PACT Act has been a big deal. It's been all over the news lately. I'm sure you all have seen the PACT Act and how it affects some of you that fall into these categories. So one of the major things that the PACT Act did was add 20, actually a little bit more than 20 presumptive conditions for burn pits, Agent Orange, and other toxic exposures. So many of you were exposed to toxins, whether that was Agent Orange in the Vietnam region or the burn pits in the Middle Eastern region. The VA has now conceded that there are conditions that they consider presumptive. Mike, would you give us a definition of presumptive for me? Sure. What does that mean?
Basically what it means is if you meet criteria A and B, it equals C. So criteria A, you were in one of these locations. Criteria B, you've got one of these conditions. It's service connected. That's C. That's the simplest way to put it. You don't have to prove it. All you got to prove is you were there and that you have the condition. Whereas with normal stuff, like let's say my knee got busted. I got to prove that I was in the service. That's pretty easy. We've got most of it. Hopefully everybody's got their DD-214. I got to prove that I got the injury. Okay, yep, my doctor says my knee's messed up. But now I got to show that it happened. Where it happened, when it happened, that it happened on active duty. The difference is if it's a presumptive condition, you don't have to prove that part. It's already there. The VA says yes. Yes, sir.
Are there any presumptive conditions for just having a certain MOS, like tinnitus?
So tinnitus is a little bit different. There's essentially a list of MOSs in which it dictates, or it's stated, and it's for all branches, that if you have this MOS, it's either, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it's highly probable,
moderate and low.
So highly probable, moderate, and low risk of auditory trauma, which is loud noise you're exposed to. That simplifies the process. It's not automatic though. The examiner has to give a favorable medical opinion stating that yes, it's more likely than not that your tinnitus was caused by the loud noise exposure you had. The only difference is if it's highly probable, it's more than likely going to be connected versus there's a low probability and you can't demonstrate that you were exposed to loud noise. Like if you were a human resources specialist, the VA is going to say, well, you typed or you sat behind a computer, the keyboard is not going to cause tinnitus. But they don't recognize necessarily that Well, yeah, I was human resources, but in Iraq, I was a gunner in a turret because they needed me. So that's where we might have to show a little more evidence and whatnot. Does that answer your question, Robert?
Yeah.
So you have again, in your folder, you have a brochure on the PACT Act. For those of you who are Gulf War and 9/11 era veterans, you'll look at this white section. If you are Vietnam War era veteran, this darker blue section. This lists all of the presumptive conditions that were found in this PACT Act that are now going to be automatically connected for service connection. Additionally, there are 10 plus cancers on this list, again, that fall under that burn pit for the PACT Act. So if you've been diagnosed with one of these cancers, that's going to be a presumptive condition for you. As well as adding exposure locations for Agent Orange. I know there was 2 conditions that were added to the Agent Orange Vietnam War era, hypertension being the most common for Agent Orange, but as well as adding locations. It used to be very strict on locations. You had to be kind of boots on the ground in Vietnam. That has added, and you'll now see that there's a whole list of locations on the back here that would qualify you to have those presumptive conditions. And I'm sure you will have a lot more questions on the PACT Act. I know this is kind of a big one. That is all I have as far as my presentation today. So I want to take this time now to open it up to questions. I know you all came here to learn something, so I hope that you will ask away.
Before questions, I just want to do a quick survey. Anybody served in Vietnam?
Excellent.
Anybody in Korea? As in Korean War? Korea after the Korean War, still not necessarily the best place. Iraq, Afghanistan, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Excellent. So, for all of you who happened to join the military before 1993, I want to say thank you for paving the way for my generation. Because a lot of the BS that you went through made things easier for us. You didn't have a choice. That's the way it was. And this is, you know, I'm pretty sure I speak on behalf of everybody here at the table here, regardless of our veteran status, is we want to give back, and this is one of the ways we can do that. We want to make sure that we set you up for success and help you get there. So I just want to say thank you. So with that, please, if you have questions.
Excellent. Yes, sir.
Somebody mentioned that there was a stipend for veterans for Massachusetts. Massachusetts.
Oh no, it's Massachusetts, have no doubt. But I will tell you, you know, Massachusetts gets a bad rap because they don't tax my military pension at all. But if you're 100% with the permanent total designation, Massachusetts will give you a $2,000 a year stipend. They'll give you $1,000 in February and $1,000 in August, and they will give you $1,000 off your property taxes every year. So essentially, you're getting $3,000 a year from the state of Massachusetts.
If you're 100%.
If you're 100% permanent total.
Just one
If you're service connected, I don't remember the exact. I think it's 40% or more. Is it 40 for the property tax?
Yeah, it's 400.
They'll do $400 of your property taxes if you're simply service connected.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
So, down the street at City Hall, there's a BSO office there. One, how are you different from them? And 2, do you charge a fee for your services?
There is no upfront fee for our services. However, there is a fee for our services. And I'll touch on that in just a moment. The big difference between a VSO, I was a VSO for 3 years before I came over here, and what we do is VSOs they have their hands tied a lot with what they can and cannot do. And what that typically translates into, and if any of you have worked with a VSO, and side note, if you have a VSO you work with and they're good, work with them. Because they can help you. But a VSO is going to say, okay, what do you want to claim? Oh, you want to claim tinnitus? Okay, here, fill this out. Well, what is that? Just fill it out. And then you may have to send it in, they may send it in, and whatnot. What they can do that we can't do is if they are an accredited VSO, they can call the VA on your behalf, they can ask questions. We cannot do that. So why would you come to us? Well, the reason you would come to us is because you're gonna say, oh, I want to claim tinnitus. Okay, how are your knees? How's your back? How's your mental health? How's this? And we're going to go head to toe with you, and we're going to see anything that may be related to your service. We are going to, for lack of a better term, counsel you. We're going to say, okay, here, based on what our conversations have been, based on what you said your issues are, based on your current service-connected disabilities, based on all of that, here's our recommendation of what we should claim. We will help you, we will get the claim submitted, and we are gonna follow up with you, and we're gonna check on your claim at least once a month, until everything's said and done. When everything's said and done and the decisions come back, we are gonna analyze the decisions that the VA made, and their reasonings, as long as you provide us the paperwork that they send you, and we're gonna say, oh man, they made a mistake, you need to appeal this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna help you through that. You get individual attention, you are not a number, you are a person, and that is the key. So, for me, I retired from the Army in 2015, I was fortunate enough, had the honor to retire as a Sergeant Major. I went through this process, and it was painful. It was ridiculous, and I was like, you know what? If I'm being treated like this, how's everybody else being treated? And that's what motivated me to become a VSO. And when I was a VSO, I was mad because my peers were not doing enough. And then when I said, you know what? Hey, I get these clients, I'm telling them what to expect when they go into their compensation and pension exams, and I got in trouble. You can't coach them. Why? I am telling everybody what they need to know. I'm gonna go on a tangent. Anybody ever apply for a job on usajobs.com? What happens if your resume doesn't have the right terms in it? Nothing happens.
You're not approved.
VA has its own language. Certain conditions, if you don't use certain words, you're not communicating the language that they need to understand to give the appropriate rating for what you're doing. That's where we come in. We're gonna say, okay, we've put in the claim. You now have appointments. We put on every couple of weeks, we put on a webinar. We talk about all this stuff. We will do individual coaching with you based on your conditions. If you've got something complicated, it's not like, oh, well, we submitted your claim, you're on your own. We're gonna help you. If we don't know specifically off the top of our heads, and even if we do know it off the top of our heads, we're gonna refer to the CFR, the law that dictates how the VA does all this. And we're gonna make sure you know the right terminology, the right way to do it. If we could go to the exam with you and do it for you, we would. We can't. That's just not gonna work.
I know it's probably not the best, normally isn't, but can we utilize your services via Zoom?
Yeah, we can make it happen. I mean, a lot of what we do, because a lot of us are remote, we're on the phone a lot. Do a lot of email, a lot of phone, occasionally text messages and stuff, but we can do Zoom, we can do any of the virtual, like Microsoft Teams we use a lot internally. We can do that stuff, absolutely.
I just have two more questions.
Oh, I gotta finish your first question. About our fees. So, our basic fee structure is fairly simple. If you do not get an overall increase, you do not pay a dime. So therefore, there is no risk for you. If you get an increase, the difference between where you started and where you ended with us, that difference times 5 is what you will be invoiced. We do have, different benefits for paying all at once and this and that. However, what I would say is, that money, let's say you went from, 30 to 50%. That difference you're getting for the rest of your life. What's the value of that over the rest of your life? That's a lot of money. What that payment enables us to do is take care of our folks, to pay them a good wage. They can stay professional, we can do professional development. That's why we're all here this week, to make sure that we can continue to improve our skills and help everybody out. And that's really what that does. The problem I see with a lot of VSOs is they're volunteers and they're paid next to nothing, and that doesn't help them help you.
What if it's an initial claim?
As in,
Like, first time
you've
you're.
never submitted a claim? Well, yeah, we still can help you with that.
Well, you said.
Well, you're starting at nothing, so
Okay, so whatever you.
0 to whatever you end up. We do have a lot of clients that come back. They end up getting denied, and then we can say, okay, well, this is what you need to do. These are the gaps you didn't have that need to be filled. Go do your homework, come back, and we'll work it out. We take care of it. You said you had a couple more questions, sir?
Yes, sir. So, in the past, I've gone to a couple of different VSOs, and they all seem to be a little bit personality driven.
Okay.
Meaning, one I went to, when it came down to it, he was like, nope, I'm not putting in anybody for PTSD if they didn't serve overseas in a combat zone. That's it.
That's a problem.
Yeah, that's
You
the
can see
problem.
all of our faces going, oh.
And then another one I spoke to was like, that guy is crazy. Let me tell you right now, did you finish basic? Did you finish IIT? You probably got PTSD. And in their mindset, they thought if you were in the military, you'd probably have PTSD somewhere. You just got to figure out where it is.
Yeah.
If you see a car accident on the side of the road, you see somebody dead, there was blood all over them, that could be PTSD for someone.
Could be, absolutely. Absolutely.
I just thought what you thought about.
I can't sit here and look at anybody and say you've got PTSD or you don't.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely unwarranted to judge anybody based on their service as to what mental health conditions they may or may not have. You know, just like you, do I have a heart condition? Anybody? You have no idea. I could. Well, I mean, if you serve, maybe you probably have hypertension, but you know. At the end of the day, that's what we're looking at, is we want to look at you as an individual and say, what's going on? What are you struggling with? You know, I was an MP. If that's a problem, please don't hate me too much. It just means I know how to do paperwork. Okay, so, you know, I've worked with some folks who went, 20 plus years and never deployed. But they were traffic accident investigators. They were military police investigators. They saw child abuse. They saw carnage of car accidents. People who were in the airborne community watching somebody burn in, and they had to go and, they were the first one there. There's all kinds of things that can cause trauma. That can cause depression. That can cause any mental health issues. So that is, and that's like my soapbox. Like, mental health is huge because it affects our physical health too. So the answer to your question is either one of those extremes is unacceptable.
Yeah. Because
you are you, and if we're like, yeah, you're saying I got PTSD because my drill sergeant yelled at me, I'm gonna say you're gonna need something a little more significant than that. It's not gonna go very far. Unless, of course, you've been seeking treatment and your therapist says, yep, he's got PTSD and it roots from this, because maybe you actually do. But generally speaking, that's not gonna cut it. You see where I'm going at? So.
Yeah, and then the last question is just probably more funnier than not, but if one has 100% disability, that does not mean he gets to go to DMV and get licensed, right? With the disability tag on the license, it's totally different, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It depends on the state, but for Missouri,
You gotta have a doctor write that.
You gotta have a disability from the doctor for the state of Missouri, yes.
and this is where the term disability becomes problematic, because we're talking about VA disability, and it's not like Social Security disability. It's very different. Whereas if you've got Social Security disability, you probably are gonna have a much easier time getting that disabled designation on your license or a handicap placard or plate.
So I want to add one thing. There's a thing called DIC, it's a lot of military spouses. So DIC is dependency indemnity compensation. So the way that works is if your death is directly related to an injury or illness that occurred while serving, if you're 100% disabled, after 10 years, it's automatic. So what I tell people is just like, that's about a $1,300 tax-free check to your spouse when you go. So if you pass away from cancer, you got it from the Gulf War, your spouse will now get a check, or your family. So I tell people, it's just like, this VA thing and getting everything documented and building your cases isn't necessarily just for you, it's for your family. So, not going in and really documenting everything, top to bottom, inside out, left to right, you really have the chance of hurting your family. So that's a big deal. We had somebody recently that's coming in, bad medical health, probably not gonna last much longer. What we're trying to do is figure out to make sure that the spouse gets DIC. So there's a lot of moving pieces that come with that. Does that make sense? Okay. Just had to get in my high horse.
Anybody else have questions?
What about claims that you already have in the works now? Will you pick them up and help with them?
We can absolutely pick them up and help with any claims that you already have in the works, unless they are, help me out here, the Board of Appeals.
The Board of Appeals.
We cannot, be your attorney. We cannot be your representative because we are a consulting company. We cannot go stand next to you in front of the judge, but we can absolutely counsel you and consult you on those type of
How
claims.
does the pay differential actually work with that? If they already have something in the works, you
So,
can start it with them. So
If
how
you
do
already
they
have
pay?
something in the works, when we take it over, we will take it over and actually charge you for the whole thing. So if you do have something in the works, maybe better suited for you to wait until that's finalized. But if you're, newly in that claims process and you're seeking counseling or coaching or help with those claims, hey, did I put them in right? Is there anything I can add to these claims before they're finalized? We can absolutely take that over and help out with you.
And also, if you have claims with the Board of Veteran Appeals, we do have resources that we can give you, attorneys that may take over your case for you.
That's Thank you, that's the question I was looking for, the answer I was looking for.
Sure. Yes, sir.
How much does it help or not help register yourself with the burn registry on your cancer diagnosis?
Thank you. Thank you for asking that. That's one thing we wanted to talk about today was the burn pit registry, so.
It actually does not help your claim. Basically, that's statistical information. That's how they decide what disabilities that they're gonna add to the burn pit presumptive list. So they'll look at the statistics, how many people are suffering from disabilities or this type of cancer that were in a burn pit area. And that's how they add them to the list. But as far as your disability compensation claim, it really has no effect on it.
Because I'm struggling trying to fill that burn registry out, you know, places I've been, I don't remember dates, or even places I've been, they didn't have names, you know what I mean? And then names have changed over time.
Well, if you're eligible to get on it, I would suggest doing it. It's not gonna be a big benefit for you, but in the future, it may result in additional disabilities being added to that presumptive list.
Yeah, that's how things like this come about, you know, is people from Vietnam have reported that they are all experiencing these same symptoms and the government concedes and says yes.
We also have a website that we can give you that you can go in and request your personnel records. If you can't remember dates, we can give you a website to go request your personnel records so you can get your records and then you'll have your dates for when you serve wherever.
Yeah, that would, yeah.
How many of you have been through the VA claims process, out of curiosity? So a few of you have never been through the claims process. Would you guys touch briefly on what the claims process looks like? How does that work? What happens after I file a claim?
Wait, what?
All right, so typically, after you file the claim, you know, within 2 to 3 weeks, on typical, sometimes 2 to 3 months, it just depends, process, in retrieving records. It has started speeding up lately though. You'll start getting your CMP exams. So you'll be contacted by independent contractors that will independently contact you to set up these exams. Now, once you get these exams scheduled, if you're on a program, what we advise, you know, is to let us know so we can get you scheduled for in-house coaching and so forth. Or in-house or over the phone or via our video link. Once that is done, you go to the exam and they look at everything. You talk to the examiner, and then from there, the information gets sent to the VA. After the VA, 2 to 3 months, it seems like. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. There's no rhyme or reason sometimes on our end. But you know, you'll get your results back, and from there, once again, we look at the decision letters, determine, you know, if they properly rated you, if you feel you've been rated properly, if those conditions gotten worse and so forth. But we look at that, you know, overall evidence that the VA gives out for our veterans, and then we take that as advice and move from there.
So, one thing that just kind of carry on what Bryce said is, you know, a lot of folks get confused between the Veterans Health Administration and Veterans Benefits Administration. So if you use VA healthcare, that's Veterans Health Administration. You don't have to be service connected necessarily to have VA healthcare. If you are service connected, you're entitled to VA healthcare. You just have to, you know, do the simple application for it, and it's going to be approved. VA healthcare is, you know, I need mental health therapy, I need medications, prescriptions, I need a new CPAP machine, whatever. The VA is going to take care of that. Those things if you've got VA healthcare. The Veterans Benefits Administration is where we talk claims, we talk education benefits, VA home loan benefits, all that matters. Well, the Veterans Benefits Administration, they will schedule a CMP exam or a compensation exam, and the purpose of that exam is not treatment. That is an evaluation. That exam is there to determine A, do you have the condition you say you have? B, how bad are your symptoms? And C, and that is in that examiner's professional medical opinion, do they believe that it's service connected? That's what that exam is for. So it's not a physical, there are no prescriptions and so forth come from it. And a lot of times folks get confused between those two because once folks start going through the claims process, a lot of times they're also talking to their doctor about the same issues because they want to make sure that evidence is there. Those medical records are there to show that they've got the issues. And they're like, why am I getting all these appointments? Well, because this is one side and then we also have the other side. And it's all going on. It doesn't have to be that way necessarily, but there it is. Yes, sir.
I got a testimony for that, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
So I retired in 2016,
Mhm.
and before I retired even, I started doing the process to speed it up. And I went to the VA up in Columbia, and the doctor did the whole, question, check my body and whatnot. And he noticed that when I would bend, he could hear the crackling of my knees, which to him meant that my knees were, messed up. Plus I had said so. I didn't get any disability for it. However, I got a 0 disability for it. And what that means is anytime now until I die, if I have knee problems, the VA will still fix it for me for free.
Yes.
Even though I got 0, so in other words, I don't get paid every month, but I'll still get medical
Well, I would
attention.
suggest you file a claim for increase on that knee.
Those zeros are important.
And I
That's
have a
great
lot of
point.
zeros.
Zeros are important. As Merle mentioned earlier, DIC, even if you're 0% for hypertension and you die of something related to your heart, your spouse could be eligible for a DIC. So just because you have a 0%, as long as it's service connected, those are just as important as having an actual compensable rating on it.
And these are one of the most underrated disabilities, so I agree with John. I advise you to claim to an increase on that.
Well, that is if there's something to gain out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's also kind of important to remember that, compensation is, anybody who says money's never an issue is full of it. It's part of all of our decisions, right? I mean, it's part of life. We're the only animals on this planet that have to pay to live here, so it's kind of important to do that. However, I would always say that treatment takes priority over the money. You can do them, you can take care of these things at the same time, but if you don't have your health, what's the point of having the money, right? So, I think it's always important to find that balance there somewhere. That if it's an issue you're thinking about claiming, and you're not talking to your doctor about it, you probably should be talking to your doctor about it. Because, otherwise, what's the point?
One of the other things that I think is important to mention is medical records. A lot of people go, I can't file a VA claim, I don't have them on my records. You're running all over town picking up your records from all these doctors. Not required. Not required at all to submit a VA claim. You do not have to go all over town and get your records. The VA will help you with that. They will go get your records for you. We can help you with that. Yes.
I joined the Army in February 1983, and when I did my paperwork and stuff, they were never able to find from February of '83's paperwork to about, I think it was like 88. From 88 to 2016, they had, but evidently there's somewhere, like, I'm not trying to be negative Nanny, but if you were in Vietnam or Korean War, it's not much of a chance you're gonna find much records, unfortunately. That sucks.
That's a 1973 fire. that
Yes,
burned up
there you
everything.
go.
Is that what it was?
Yes. In
Yeah.
St. Louis, of all places.
Yeah.
And it's,
Our records got burned up.
the records are not necessarily the end all be all.
Right.
Because those things happen, and the VA recognizes, it's just like the VA recognizes that most of us were trained to be invincible. You don't go to the doctor, you're never sick, don't go to sick call, just go talk to the medic and get yourself some magic pills to make you feel better. They recognize that. However, that's not gonna just be a guarantee either. So a lot of it's how we communicate these things and what's going on with the particular condition. What caused the issue? And a lot of times, well, I was in the service and this happened. It's not enough. Your knees hurt. Why do your knees hurt? Well, it might be because I was carrying 80 pounds and rucking and jumping out of aircraft and all this other stuff. But if I say, yeah, this jump when I went to, I'm a leg all day long, so I'm speculating. I jumped on, Sicily drop zone? Is that one of the ones out there at Fort Bragg? I remember it was in 1994 Sicily drop zone. I did my PLF, which is a parachute landing fall, by the way. There's nothing graceful about it. And I did feet, knees, and then head, and my bell got rung really hard, and all these problems. Now I'm telling them the event in service that caused this problem. We have to be specific. And if you don't know the exact date, so be it. Just own it. I remember, it's been a while, but I'm pretty sure it was this year. I know it was this drop zone. I know it was this location. This is what happened to me. No, I didn't go to the doc because, my sergeant was yelling at me, get off the freaking drop zone, go set up security, whatever the case may be. So that's one of the real keys that a lot of us miss when we go through this process is we don't understand the importance of that event. Now, of course, if that event is, I was diagnosed with diabetes while I was in the service, that's an event in service right there. It's in my records. Hopefully they exist. And just because you served after the fire in 73 doesn't mean that your records are still there. There's this awesome thing called human error. I was a platoon sergeant in Iraq, and my platoon was assigned to a unit out of Alaska, so our medical care was done through this unit. That unit left 30 days before we did, and one of their medics said, "Oh, we don't need these," and they shred all of my platoon's medical records. So everything that happened in those 15 months are gone. Can't do anything about it. Gotta accept it for what it is. How do I deal with that? Well, my platoon leader knows what happened. I'm gonna have him write a statement. The squad leaders in my platoon know what happened. They can write a statement. They can say I'm full of it. They can't say that every single one of us is full of it. So, there's ways we can help build evidence.
And there's a misconception with the fire. Yes, it was a fire in 1973, but only 2 branches was affected. And it's for the veterans that was in the Army from November the 1st, 1912 and January 1st, 1960. And for the veterans that was in the Air Force from September the 25th, 47 and January 1st, 64. And your name began with Hubbard and on. So if you weren't in during that time, you were not part of the fire.
So if your records aren't there, there's another reason.
It's another reason, it ain't the fire.
I think the point of this is not everybody walks the same disability claim path. Your path is gonna look very different than the person sitting next to you because maybe they do have their records, or your records are missing pieces, or you experienced this and you went to the doctor and they didn't, they were treated by the medic in their unit. Everybody's path looks different, and our job is to kind of help you figure out how to walk your path. That's where we come in.
I was told whenever I started at the VA that I would never see the same claim twice. And I was surprised by that. And I'm like, yeah, there's only so many ways you can file a claim. But they were right. After 16 and a half years, I never saw the same claim twice. And it was because every single person had their own evidence, their own situation, their own circumstances. So each person was their own. So they were absolutely correct. I never did see the same claim twice. So each one of us has our own issues, our own claims that we need to be addressed. So don't always assume that because your neighbor has this, you can't have it as well. It's gonna depend on your evidence.
And it doesn't cost us a thing to start the process.
Correct.
You got it. Ashley, you
All
have a
right,
question?
so yes, I got a few questions from Facebook.
Awesome.
The first question is, what about those still serving in the reserves or guard?
Perfect. Who wants to stab at it?
I think I know who asked that question, but anyway, so if you're still serving in the Guard or Reserve and you are not active Guard and Reserve, i.e. I'm doing my weekend drill, my 2 weeks of summer, waiting to be put on orders for whatever comes up, you can submit a claim. Of course, there are risks to that. If you submit a claim and you come back 100% for, I don't know, we're just gonna go PTSD, they're probably gonna find you unfit for duty at that point in time, and you're gonna end up being separated from the Guard or Reserve. Let's say, tinnitus, we'll go with an easy one. I got tinnitus, heard too many things blow up, now, my ears ring off and on, and it's just really a disturbance in my life. Get service connected, they gave you 10%. You have an option at this point to take that VA payment every month, the 10% rate, which is probably about $140 a month right now, I think. Or you can waive it and not take it. The reason you would waive it is because if you take it, at the end of the year, your unit has to report to the Guard and Reserve the number of days that you were on duty throughout that year. The VA is going to say, well, for those number of days you were on duty, you cannot receive disability during those days, so now you owe us this much money. So if it's like 10%, it's probably worth waiving it. Now if you're at like 70%, it might be worth not waiving it, taking that money and just banking it, and at the end of the year when they say, oh, you owe us $1,000, well, you had more than $1,000 you saved, so you give them $1,000 and there you go. So yes, you can do that while you were still in the Guard and Reserve. If you're AGR, Active Guard and Reserve, where you're on Title 10? Title 10 orders, where you're actually on active duty, the key here, especially if you're not around a military installation, is make sure that you see the doctor, you get the record, and it shows when you were in that time frame. We go to our traditional Guard and Reserve folks, If you're injured, you have an issue, I highly, highly recommend seeking a line of duty investigation with your unit to determine if that condition, that injury was incurred in the line of duty, because without that, it's gonna be very difficult to get the connection. If just we're straight traditional guard reserve with no active duty time for anything other than training. So hopefully that answers our online question.
Awesome. I got one more. Okay. All right. So it says, I am 100% PMT. Should I register with the PACT Act due to DS?
Desert Storm.
Oh, that's-
Sorry.
So register with the PACT Act is terminology becomes difficult here. If we're talking the burn pit registry, absolutely get on the burn pit registry. If for anything else, you are helping your fellow veterans out who have been in those areas by establishing the different conditions that may end up being presumptive down the road. In addition to that, if something else is found to be presumptively service connected, if you're on that registry, you're going to get notification from the VA anytime there's a change regarding any presumptive conditions for those areas. Which can become an issue if you've got something, I mean, I'm not gonna die from a broken ankle, but if I get cancer, that could kill me. Now we're talking worrying about my family more than myself afterwards. If you're 100% PNT and you are concerned with conditions that may be on that registry, you gotta think about the condition. Do I wanna poke the bear because I have sinusitis and my snot's dripping down the back of my throat? It might not be worth poking a bear. If I've got a respiratory cancer, yeah, it's probably worth doing it because of the additional potential issues down the road. So hopefully that answers that question.
Any other questions, Ashley, from online?
Not at the moment.
Awesome. Any other
Oh,
questions here?
He said, will it hurt my 100% rating? For the,
No, not to get on the registry.
No, the registry alone will not touch any claims whatsoever.
Perfect. Anybody else have any other questions? No?
I got one more question, about the education for the 100% your kids or your wife or whatever. How far does that go? Is it a set amount, $4,800 or?
36
It's a number of
36
years that
months.
they can.
Number of years?
They'll carry it for a number of years, maybe 8 years, I'm not for sure, don't quote me, but it's a number of years that they will receive that stipend at $1,200, $1,300, whatever it is.
The key when it comes to the education benefits is the school that they're going to has a, in the registrar's office will have a VA representative, VA certified liaison that knows the ins and outs with all that stuff. So that's really the key on that piece. But if you're 100% permanent total, the dependent educational assistance is very awesome. It's very helpful. And you know, there are age limitations for kids and stuff like that, but it's absolutely worth exploring.
And it's not only for your children, it's for your spouse too. Your spouse can use that chapter.
She don't have a school.
She wants to, she can.
Do they have any requirements, like a lot of benefits, it depends on how much salary you are making now?
No.
No,
As
not for
far as,
chapter.
Like if I'm making 500,000 a year, example, will I still get that benefit for my children?
absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, when we're talking VA disability compensation, all of these benefits and compensation are not dependent on your income. This is not any income base. Doesn't matter if you are the CEO of this big corporation making $1 million a year, you're still eligible for these benefits. Any other questions? Oh, no.
If we're just seeking, like exploring an increase, do I have to do anything before I contact, you guys, or?
No, we'll
Not at all. We can walk you through the entire process.
I've got one.
Yes.
I'm gonna scare somebody. I retired in 2009. I was one of the very first ones that went through the benefits before discharge programs. Well, you know, on my lunch break, here's your form, fill it out with all the crap that I had in my head. Well, I wound up getting 50% out of that through the CMP exams. Well, 10 years happened and life got busy and I went back to the VSO just for a fact-finding mission. Here, fill out this form and we'll get an increase. Well, I got another 30% increase. So I'm sitting at 80%. So I asked for my C file because I wanted to know what these yahoos had to say. So I got my CD, and I'm pretty sure that whoever was scanning my medical records dropped them on the way to the scanner. So I've got over 5,000 pages in my C file, and I probably got 800 to another 1,000 pages that I know that didn't get in there for my original thing. How's the best way for me to do this, to present it to you, to make it easier for the process for that other 20%? Because I know there's crap in here that I've got.
I would say, identify what it is you wanna claim,
Okay,
potentially, that you feel is service connected.
okay.
Find the pertinent records.
How's the best way to do that? Look at that, what's the thing in the VA with all the listings of
The 38 CFR.
that's it. Is that the best way to go through that? How do you suggest I start the process to,
So the best way to help us help you with that
yes,
is to identify what it is you're looking to claim. If
Okay.
you're like connected for you didn't get connected for your ankle, you know you injured in service, you know it's been an issue ever since, find that record
okay,
and just earmark it.
okay,
Even if it's just like the date of the record. And that right there will be very helpful because, you know, for anybody who doesn't know what a C file is, it's your claims file. It is the VA, Veterans Benefits Administration, every document they have on you, every letter they've ever sent to you. If you've never filed a claim with the VA, your C file is basically your service treatment records, if they have them. If you file a claim with the VA, like she said, you know, you're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of pages. And there may be repetitive pages in there.
lab results and all the other garbage
Yes,
that goes in.
everything is in there. You know, every annual physical, your exit physical, you know, every time you go into the hearing booth, all that stuff's in there. So, that's a pretty big task to go through those things. One of the biggest pieces that I feel is very important about this process, and you've lent into that, is we will do what we can. We cannot do everything.
Yes.
You have to be part of the process. You have to own part of this. And you know, we're not gonna be like, oh, well, none of us will be, just fill this out. We might be like, all right, we gotta fill this out. Let's talk. Tell me about this. Okay. You know, we're taking care of business. So, and in reality, there's so many, the VA claims process is a good old choose your own adventure book. Everybody remember those? You know, you get to a certain page, do you do this or this? Go to this page. Go to this page. And you're all over the place. There's a lot of misconceptions out there. You know, like, I need to get an increase for tinnitus. Well, you're 10%. Yeah, but I need an increase. It's really bad. It's 10% is the maximum allowable by law. It's never gonna go higher. Don't waste your time. You know, my knees are horrible. I only got 10%. Well, you have full range of motion. The VA's not gonna give you anything more. You know, that's where we're coming in. We're gonna do the hard work. You know, there's a lot of common things that we know right off the bat, but you know, if we're talking something that we don't deal with every day, we're gonna read it, we're gonna know what it says, we're gonna make sure that we're comparing the CFR to the VA's adjudication manual, which is what the raters have to use to determine whether something's connected. And at the end of the day, with the VA having rules, we want something from the VA, we've gotta follow their rules. So we're gonna make sure that we've got everything together to follow those rules and take care of business.
One of the important things I would say about this organization is each and every one of us do a risk assessment. So, you know, when you come in and you say, well, my back's 40, I want to file an increase, well, you know, I'm going to recommend you not do that because it's more likely it's going to end up reduced than increased. You know, there are certain disabilities where there's potential or a good potential for an increased evaluation. Sometimes people come in and they have the disabilities there and, you know, you can get them that 100%. You know, it's not dependent on getting another service-connected disability. So the biggest mistake I see is service organizations filing claims for increase for a bunch of stuff. Some of them get reduced, some get increased, and the veteran walks out with nothing. So, you know, by minimizing your risk, the odds of you getting an increase or walking out with a higher rating than what you came in with are better.
But are they like for totally separate things? Like I've got two, there's one's for 50 and one's for 30, then a whole bunch of zeros and some other small ones. But like if there's something totally separate from those claims, would that risk them reducing my 80%?
The one thing I will tell you, with the VA give it, they can take it away.
Well, I
So
that's true.
if they go in there and they identify an error in their prior decision, they can take it. Is that likely to happen? No. If we file a claim for a knee, they're not going to look at your back 9 times out of 10 and say, oh, well, we're going to reduce that. Is there at some risk? There's always some risk. It's very minimal, But again, I'm gonna steer you, or we would steer you away from taking unnecessary risk.
Okay.
And with that as well, there are several conditions that tie together. For example, if you're service connected for something for mental health and you also have migraine headache service connected, and you look for an increase for one of those, there's a good chance the other is going to be evaluated as well. So that's where we're going to look at the risk. We're going to do that risk management and say, well, your ratings are this. There's a good chance it's going to be reduced, and this one will trigger this one, so we're going to leave those alone. Or the same type of situation. Yep, these are completely unrelated systems. They're not going to be a problem. We're going to make sure that we don't we're going the least risk possible. And if you've got nothing, you've never filed, you have no risk whatsoever.
And our risk assessment is not based on how we feel or think either. We educate you through the process based on the law.
You asked a great question though, what can I do to prepare for this? Sorry, I'm sorry. Okay, how can I best prepare to submit a VA claim? Whether you use us or anybody else, I think the best thing that we could tell you from all of us here is to sit down and take a self-assessment. We're gonna do the same thing when you come to us. Tell me about your ailments, head to toe. Sit down with your spouse, your significant other, your children. Have them help you figure out what are those things that you're doing. Does my knee hurt? Okay, yeah, my knee hurts. Can I think back to a time in service when maybe I injured my knee? Just make a list. Type it in your phone, make a handwritten list of all the things that you think are wrong with you, and then think about when those events were in service that you can tie together those things. And maybe it's these guys helping you or somebody else helping you tie the right knee to the left knee. Because you injured the right knee in service, the left knee you maybe didn't, but we can tie those two things together with what we call secondary conditions. So this, the first thing I would tell you is sit down and just make a list of all the things that you think are wrong with you, and then all those things that could be service connected.
And then go through your records and tab those.
If you have them.
Okay, that's kind of what I was wondering.
Yeah.
It's because I started doing it by year, and like, holy cow, then I got to my C file, it's like I might have a 2009 record, then a 1978 record, or 79 record. It's like there's no right
I could be there for
in those
years.
records.
Yes, sir.
I was just gonna say, I filed, like I said before, just before I retired. And I've also did the subsequent, whatever you call it, refiled for more, and it's not just paperwork. Whatever you file for, you will be seen by a specialist to back it up. It's not like just putting paperwork in and that some judge is gonna decide whether or not to get it. They're actually gonna come and check out whatever you're filing for, so.
That's right. Yes.
And another thing that Mike talked about was, say for instance, you did not go on sick call. Everything may not always be in your service treatment records, but now years later, I have knee issues or I have back issues, and you were airborne. Certain things that you did in the military could have contributed, and you just sucked it up and drove on in the military, but now so you still can also file a claim. We just gotta make sure you got a excellent lay statement to go with it. If you was a paratrooper, your body wasn't designed, God didn't design your body to jump out of those planes and absorb the ground. I'm just saying.
Unless you do small drugs.
Yeah, you weren't designed that way. So now you got a back issue or a knee issue as a result of it. So think of it that way. Everything may not be in your STRs, but if you can relate it based on your job that you did in the military.
STR.
Service treatment records, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Service treatment records. So maybe you can relate it to that. Or you were in the field and you got injured and you just saw a medic and it's no longer in your records. Or it's not in your records, never was in your records.
And for the things you're talking about right there, I can say from experience, it probably is better to go through you all because depending on which BSO you get, some are not very good writers. And you should have got it, but he just wrote maybe a paragraph when 3 or 4 paragraphs, much more, correctly written would have got you that benefit.
Well, and you're not always gonna get an appointment either. That's important. If you file, doesn't mean you're automatically gonna be evaluated. So you have to meet the minimum requirements for service connection to even get an appointment for the CNP process. So, you know, that's we satisfy those requirements in the statements and, you know, throughout the process. So just because you file a claim for it doesn't mean you're gonna have an appointment for it.
You can be denied before you get there.
Yeah, we make sure you do, but you know,
Try our best.
yeah.
All right, we're gonna wrap up.
I have-
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, one more
All right.
question, sorry.
Go ahead.
If I'm 100% disabled, does that mean I can't work?
Great question.
No.
Depending, is he
No.
collecting it, is it a straight out 100 or is he collecting it based on unemployability?
Doesn't say.
If it's a straight out combined evaluation of 100%, you can work.
If you got individual unemployability, then there are limitations. But we would rather anybody who's gonna get that 100% that is combined, so that you can work as much or as little as you want.
Did you have a question too, ma'am?
No, I was just.
Okay. Thank you. We good? All right, we're gonna wrap up. In front of you, there is a survey card. If you all wouldn't mind, please filling that out. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to learn about in a future event. You know, this is our first Lunch and Learn. We're really looking forward to your feedback of how it went so we can plan these for the future and help out as many veterans as we possibly can with this information. I think it's important that every veteran has at least the information and can make their own decision of what they want to do to file claims moving forward. But we really appreciate you coming today. I hope it was beneficial for you. I hope you learned something. If you do want to talk to any of us further, we all are wearing red shirts today. Make it very easy. Anybody up here is willing to answer any questions that you have. We're all going to kind of mingle about. If you have any individual questions or you're interested in learning more about our process and how we can help you, grab one of us in the red shirts and we can walk you through that. We can also schedule you an appointment to come back at a later time if that's something that you feel more comfortable doing. But thank you again for coming. Thank you again, panel and case managers. Lovely up there. Thank you. Y'all did a great job.